phases of the moon, you'll have to ask your science teacher about that. In chess, there are 3 phases to the chess game: the opening, the middle game, and the end game. Future videos will tackle these topics a little bit more in depth, but today I just want to give you an overview of these 3 phases. Let's first talk about the opening. In the opening, we have something called the dream position. That's where all of your pieces find their happiest squares. By now you know the 3 goals of the opening: control the center, develop your pieces, and castle. And if I were to give white a whole bunch of moves in a row, he'd probably put his pawns aiming at the middle, then he'd put his knights on the happy squares because they're aiming at the middle. He'd probably also put his bishops aiming at the middle. A couple more moves, he'd castle his king. He'd move his queen up. Notice the rooks are now connected. And he would put his rooks either in the center or on open files. There are no open files here, so probably the center is the best place. Those are the goals of the opening. Once all of your pieces come out, we transition. We call it the middle game. Of course, it's the middle of the game. We're not inventing new terms here. This is probably the hardest part of the game for Fun Master Mike to give you advice, because it depends a lot on the positioning of the pieces. Let's take a look at 2 quick examples from games that I've played in the past. Here's a game I played against a grandmaster about 10 years ago. My queen was in danger. It occurred to me that all of my minor pieces are out, my king is safe. I have one piece that's not having any fun. This rook over here on the square A1. So I came up with this nice idea. I saved my queen by making a trade. And the reason I liked this trade is because when black took and I took back, I have control of the only open file of the chessboard. There are no pawns on that file. Later on in the game, I can get my worst piece, which is this rook, all the way over to the open file, and I'm doing very well. Here's how the game continued. He captured my bishop, I took back, he moved his knight off of that file, I got my knight to c3, notice my pawn needed protection. He played a5, my bishop goes in, okay, we danced around a little bit, nothing too important there. And then finally I got my worst piece in the game. Take a look at this chess position. None of black's pieces are particularly happy, whereas all of my pieces are on open files or aiming at the center of the board. A couple more moves to show you, and look at this, my rook snuck into the last rank. And in this position, every single one of white's pieces is better than black's pieces. Just a few more moves to show you. Black played b6, and it occurred to me that this knight's not doing a whole lot. So I rerouted this knight, and after a quick trade of rooks, I played the move knight to c4. Notice how much better my knight's doing on c4 rather than on f3, and I'm already winning a pawn. I'm double attacking the pawn on b6, and he can't really move it because after a quick pawn trade, then he would lose this pawn over here on the square a5. So I'm already beating a grandmaster by simply putting my pieces on good squares and aiming at the open file. Whoa. Another example of how to play the middle game was this game I played when I was in high school. It occurred to me that black doesn't have a lot of defenders around his king, and my knight on h2 is my worst piece. So I played the move knight to g4, and after a quick trade, this time my plan was a kingside attack. This pawn is pinned. Remember, when a pawn is pinned, it's not guarding anything. So this pawn on h6 is about to be captured. Now, he offered a queen trade, but when you're attacking in the middle game, do not trade. We'll go into that more in future videos. I played queen to h5, and after he slid his queen over, I made this sacrifice. He took back. I gave a check. Remember, this pawn's pinned. This time it's to the other bishop, so the pawn cannot take my queen. I took. And then there's nothing on the G file to guard the black king. It's not an open file, but what I can do is bring my rook up and over. I played rook to e3, and as you might guess, black did not survive much longer because the rook is coming over to the G file. So in this particular middle game, a kingside attack is what was warranted. The final phase of the chess game is the endgame. Now, a couple rules change in the endgame. Number 1, the king becomes a fighting piece. Number 2, the goal is not usually checkmate, it's usually the first person to get a promotion. Let's take a look at a quick example, again from one of my games. Both kings are active, and in this situation, my pawns as white are a little further advanced than black's, but I've got to figure out a way to get one to the other side. Maybe you're looking at pawn takes pawn, maybe you're looking at pawn to g6, but if you work those out, I don't think you're going to find a way that a pawn definitely gets to the other side. You could pause your videos and try to figure out what the chess master move is here. Well, if you found the move knight to f6, you are a chess master. Such a cool move, it forks the king and the knight. Now he's got a couple of options. He pretty much has to take my knight or else he loses his own knight. If he takes with the pawn, I'm going to play this tricky move g6, and I don't see a way for him to stop my pawn. Yeah, he could make a trade, but this knight is in such close proximity, it's not able to stop my pawn. His other option, going back here, was to take with his knight, but now we take back this way, and he's got a big problem. I'm about to take and make a promotion, and if instead he takes me, I can either push or take this pawn, and I don't see a way for him to stop my pawn from getting to the other side.
Ta-da!
We've got three phases of a chess game, kids. The opening, the middle game, and the end game. In the opening, get your pieces out, get your king safe, control the center. In the middle game, you have to develop a plan based on where your pieces are. And in the end game, activate your king and try to get a promotion. We're going to go into these a little bit more in depth, so stay tuned for some future videos.